I'm going to tell you now about a mysterious new Chinese blog that seems to offer unique insider insight into the current China-US trade dispute. It's called Taoran Notes, and it's become a prominent voice in the mainstream Chinese media. But is it actually a state-sponsored voice? To get some insight now, we're joined on the line by Kerry Allen, the BBC's China media analyst. Kerry, what's the story behind Taoran Notes? What's written on this blog to get it so much attention?
Well, it's very unusual because it started out just appearing to be somebody's blog. They were talking about moving around Beijing, some of the nice scenic areas, and then suddenly around January this year, a lot of very unusual posts started appearing. This is on a platform called WeChat, which is very similar to WhatsApp, and they indicated that this person had a kind of an inside view into the ongoing negotiations between the US and China.
So what kinds of things are we seeing? Sorry.
There were talks about, for example, what was actually happening within the negotiations, because what's been coming out within China has been largely through the Xinhua news agency, very official reports saying that progress is being made, but no actual indication of the nitty-gritty, so to speak. So discussions really about, one example being that for 2 hours, the US and Chinese representatives were arguing over a single word, and small details, particularly about how China is just showing that it's not going to back down whatsoever. Things that the president can't say, for example, but really kind of strong opinions coming out of this very personal blog that have then been shared by media like People's Daily, the China Radio International, very big media that would never normally pay so much attention to one small person.
Is there any idea who's behind it?
Well, a lot of theories seem to suggest that it's a senior reporter at a newspaper called The Economic Daily, and this is a paper that's run directly by the State Council, so anything that comes out of this paper normally would have direct government approval. One of the names that's been mentioned is a journalist called Lian Jun, who's previously spoken about, he's written commentaries on China and US relations. People have said that because, the name Taoran Notes, it doesn't seem to have any obvious affiliations. Taoran literally means happy and carefree, but some people online have been noting that Taoranting is a park that's very close in Beijing to the offices of the Economic Daily newspaper.
The plot thickens. I'm going to open up the discussion to my two guests, Agnès Poiré and Marcus Chown. Marcus, do you have any questions or for Kerry Allen?
No, but I'm kind of interested that I think I just Googled, and I don't know how correct this is, but 27% of cyber attacks begin in China. The idea that Huawei, there is a close connection, we believe, between Huawei and the state. The idea that it could be a threat to the rest of the world seems to be quite strong, although only 17% of cyber attacks begin in the USA. But I'm just thinking this kind of, the idea that this technology would be used for bad means, it seems obvious, really. I mean, Britain in the Second World War was able to break the German Enigma and fish codes and shorten the World War by about 2 years. And we in Britain looked at not only enemy messages but also our allies. So even American stuff was read. So the temptation for the Huawei to do this and the Chinese state would be quite great, I think.
Kerry, has Taoran Notes said anything about Huawei?
Huawei hasn't really factored into a lot of the discussions coming out of Taoran Notes. I mean, what China's media had been saying broadly about Huawei is that, yes, it's a private company, it's become very successful, and they've been very critical largely. I mean, this is big state media of any company being targeted. Huawei there's been a lot of attention on Huawei anyway because of its inroads with 5G technologies, the fact that it's becoming now known as a big international competitor, and given last year that its CFO was arrested in Canada under the US's directions. There's an almost kind of idea that Huawei has been unfairly targeted here. I mean, China has said all along that when it comes to cyber attacks, it says that it's also one of the biggest victims. There's been dialogue about this long term, that it's been saying that it's unfair, and it's something that the country does recognise that there needs to be better securities in place, better protections. But yeah, in the case of Huawei, it's been saying that people shouldn't feel threatened. They should actually see this as an advantage. It's a company that's grown from grassroots really, and has had the opportunity to develop, and should receive the same kind of attention as Apple. It should be recognised as offering decent technologies, and has been unfairly criticised.
Anya, let's bring you into the discussion as well. Are you concerned at all about the effects of the ongoing US-China trade battle?
Yes, I am, although I'm not, an economist. But it's extraordinary how Donald Trump, just looking at figures, think he's got an advantage in a trade war just because of the trade imbalance, if you like, between the US and China. Who can think that you will win against China? Also, the Chinese president doesn't fear elections, and in the end, we all lose from trade wars. And, even Europe, which is sort of squeezed in the middle and looking at it like at a tennis match, in Wimbledon, sorry. And it gets worse. And you think, reason will prevail, especially in the middle of negotiations. Why do you raise tariffs like this when you're actually negotiating something with the partner? So I hope it stops at some point, because I don't see any happy outcome.
Okay, just one last question for you, Kerry, before we wrap this up. Is there a history of the Chinese state media citing blogs like this in the past that sort of have a bit murky backgrounds?
Well, there is. They're not widely known about, but I mean, yeah, two of the biggest papers, People's Daily and Global Times, have both been known to do this. One of the names that does come out quite a lot is Shan Rinping in Global Times. So Global Times is the foreign affairs newspaper in China. So a lot of commentaries historically on China and US relations have often come out of there. But Shan Rinping is a name that if you search it, there's no indication who this person is. There's no details about them, and it's widely suggested that they're the editor of the newspaper Hu Xijin. And this other paper, People's Daily, which is the official government mouthpiece, there have also been a lot of commentaries from somebody called Hua Yisheng. And again, if you search this person's name, there's no indication who they are, but they're commonly cited as an international affairs specialist. And yeah, there's no detail as to who this person is. But yeah, it's possible it may be the government's thinking.
Okay, well, thank you very much to Kerry Allen, the BBC's China media analyst.